Hello friends, and welcome to Let's Play UN Squadron. I'm going to be your host, MC Banjo Mike, but before we get started, let's take a little trip into the options menu here. UN Squadron has 3 difficulty levels you can play on: normal, hard, and easy. I'm going to play on normal because the game's hard enough as it is, and I'd really like to make it to the end before I'm finished with this Let's Play. I also made a change to the control scheme already. I swapped the weapon select button for R so I could dedicate a thing to it. And with that said, let us begin. Here's the pilot select screen. You've got your Shin Kazamas, your Mickey Scymons, and your Greg Gateses. Sadly, no option to play as that guy in the background with a hook for a hand. That's too bad. Due to a popular vote, I'm going to be playing as Mickey Scymon. That suits me fine because he's the guy that I would take most of the time anyway. And here we have the map screen. This is where the guy with the skinny tie and the X on his forehead tells us what we're up against. The main levels for UN Squadron are indicated with these groups of 3 red triangles, but there are also vehicles that patrol around the map, and each one of those has a special stage associated with it. For now though, we've only got one choice, so we're going to fire that up. This is the frontline base. We're going to take it and make it our sword for thwarting Project 4, whatever that is. Next up we have the plane outfitting area. So here's where you can buy new planes if you're not completely broke. For now I'm stuck with my good old F-80, but you know, one day we'll be able to afford something fun like an F-20, or maybe an F-14D. My personal favorite, the A-10A, the YF-23, or the F-200, if you got the big money. For now we're going to stick with the Crusader. It's a pretty basic plane. It has a max Vulcan cannon level of 5, but right now it's at basic level 1, so it's going to take quite a while to get that upgraded all the way. Every plane has a suite of different special weapons you can buy for it. The Crusader doesn't have a whole lot to boast, but it does have the cluster shot, your basic bombs, cheap and cheerful, and the Mega Crush. I'm only going to buy the regular bombs because I don't have a lot of money, and the first level honestly is pretty straightforward. And off we go! First thing to note about UN Squadron is that unlike really old shooters for the NES era, you don't have to press the button every time you shoot, but unlike modern shooters, you do have to press it more than once. So every time you press the fire button, you fire off maybe 6 shots or so from your Vulcan cannon. That thing that I just collected is a Pow Capsule, and I need to get a bunch of those if I want to upgrade the Vulcan. If you've ever played an old school shooter, you should know that red enemies are the ones that drop power-ups, and that's where I'm going to get my POWs from. That thing that I just grabbed was a hidden item. There are a lot of hidden items in the levels of this game, and that's a sort of mech robot thing that destroys all the enemies on the screen. There's actually another one of those coming up a little later on. And there we go, managed to upgrade my power to level 2. That makes a big difference. So there I just took my first hit in the game, and one of the reasons why I think UN Squadron is pretty forgiving for a shooter is that you don't die as soon as you hit something. What happens instead is you go into danger mode where the ship flashes and your pilot looks unhappy for a few seconds. But if you can survive without getting hit for a few seconds, then that goes extinct and you're back into safe mode. You've lost a little bit of health, but you know, you're fine. If you get hit a second time during that time, then you die. So here we are fighting the first boss from the first area. It is a complete and utter pushover. I've just dropped some bombs on it for the sake of variety, but mostly you can just hang out in front of it. As long as you shoot down the little missiles, it doesn't stand much of a chance. Just try not to stand in front of the launcher for the big ones. Get some money for finishing the level. You also get a refund for your special weapons. That's not really a big deal right now, but in later levels, if you've invested a ton of money in your special weapons, it can be pretty nice to get that back. Normally I'm only going to do 1 mission per update, but since the first level is so short, I thought I could permit myself to do a second one on the same video. So now that we've finished it, we've got an 88 logo over where we just were, and the field of view is expanded. So now we have the forest level available, as well as the desert up top and the ocean in the bottom. However, we also have the enemy air force, this pink plane here, and that's the level that I'm going to do. I realize that's kind of totalitarian of me, and eventually this is going to become a proper Let's Play where you guys decide what levels I do in what order, but I want to start with this one because it'll give me a chance to get some much needed cash and weapon upgrades for my plane. Still stuck with the Crusader? This time I'm going to get the regular bombs and also the Mega Crush, which is pretty useful against the boss. And here we go. So the Air Force level takes place in between 2 cloud layers in a storm, and it's a lot busier than the first level was. You got planes coming at you from all angles, including these stealth jobbies that like to swirl around and tend to run into unsuspecting pilots here and there. That was another one of those robots that destroys all the enemies on screen, which I picked up when there was no one on screen, so hooray for me. So one of the distinguishing features of this level is the presence of these giant planes that drop down from above and try to kill you by shooting rocket-powered anchors at you, I guess, or grappling hooks or something. I've never really understood. I've always thought that they were pretty funny, though, because the planes are so gigantic that there's no way that they can actually fly. They seem to kind of revel in their violation of the laws of aerodynamics. And I realize that shouldn't be a very big deal for a shooter, because most shooters have much more ridiculous things than this, but most shooters also take place in space, you know, and they're in the future, and you can kind of wave your hands and say, oh, you know, who knows what they'll come up with by the time the Beto Empire gets around to attacking us. UN Squadron's designs are a lot more based on real aircraft, so, you know, this one kind of sticks out when it's like 100 times the size of my little plane. Of course, we're going to see things that are much worse than that later on, so I probably shouldn't get too worked up over it now. One of the big things in this level is making sure that you really hound these big planes and destroy them quickly, because if you don't, you're going to wind up with 2 or 3 on the screen, and that sucks. In the meantime, you also want to see if you can blow up as many small planes as possible, because that gives you money, and like those red guys there, drops more power-ups. So if you can manage to snag enough of those to get up to level 3 like I just did, that makes this fight a lot easier. I just unearthed, those are fuel tanks floating in the sky there, and if I'd taken any damage before, that would have healed me for up to about half of my life bar's worth. This giant stealth fighter, equally ridiculous, if not more so than the planes that we saw earlier just because of its size, it's actually pretty tough compared to the first boss in the game. These bombs that it shoots are very hard pattern to avoid. You can make them detonate a little bit early if you shoot them, but that doesn't always help you. So what I did was I used the Mega Crush to give myself a little bit of time. Whenever the Mega Crush is firing, you're invincible. It makes a nice panic button when you're facing a boss. So that's it. Second mission complete. You guys chose the wrong team. Mickey's questioning their sexuality. Join me next time for the continuing adventures of UN Squadron.